Black. And very excited to speak with Jay Barnett, who is a former NFL player turned author, speaker, mental health coach, and licensed life, marriage, and family therapist. Now, Jay also served as an ambassador of the Black Enterprise Modern Man of Distinction series, and he was honored as Black Enterprise's 2019 BE Modern Man of the Year. Thank you so much for being here with us, Jay.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, like I said offline, you have a lot going
Man,
on.
a lot
You've
going
been, you do.
a lot
You've been
going on.
everywhere.
Man, a lot
You've
going
been
on.
everywhere.
Yeah.
I've seen you on The Breakfast Club. You've been on Peace of Mind with Taraji P. Henson. You have a few tours that you've done, books. And, whenever you speak, you're very open about your own journey to mental wellness and even how you attempted suicide in your past. So I wanted to start there. When and how did your journey to wellness begin?
Well, my journey to wellness began when I began going to therapy, and particularly after my second suicide attempt, and I survived that ordeal. I think it was very critical and crucial for me if I wanted to really maintain a life where I can move forward. Because really, when you're looking at someone who struggles with suicide ideation, which is suicidal thoughts, and whether they have attempted or they're contemplating, a lot of this is centered around pain, and a lot of this is centered around internal pain. And so for myself, I wasn't playing anymore. I didn't have an outlet. I didn't have any healthy coping skills. So for me, it was important to figure out how could I deal with this pain, because I kept trying to run from everything. And that was my challenges. I wanted to run from everything. I didn't want to deal with it, because to deal with it, it's really meaning that you have to go back and revisit it. And so I didn't want to revisit anything about my childhood, my parents' divorce, the physical abuse that I've endured with my stepfather. So I didn't want to deal with any of those things. But it wasn't until I got into therapy and then I gained the understanding that dealing with it meant processing and really addressing how did it affect me. And when I began to deal from that perspective, I also began to discover how liberating it was to talk about things and to really address it. Because in the Black community, we have this tendency of, well, what goes on in his house stays in his house. And then I grew up in a family where my father's a pastor, and I grew up in a church home where you just pray about everything and you don't really talk about things. And so that's kind of began my healing journey, going to therapy and really discovering that therapy was really a space for me to just talk about things and not feel judged.
When you talk about pain and trauma, and I know you touched on some of the things that you dealt with in your past and in your childhood, how do, as a therapist, how do you coach your clients and, how do you coach people on just getting through the pain and really dealing with it?
Well, one of the things is that therapy is really a journey, and I make sure to echo that whenever I'm working with clients, is that this is going to be a journey. This is not going to be a one-stop shop. This is not going to be you take the red pill, you take the blue pill, and everything is going to be okay. One of the things about pain is that most of us are suffering from the memories of things. And so it's the memory that creates the PTSD, right? The post traumatic stress disorder, right? And so it is that pain of the memory of who caused it or how it happened. And that's what most of us are dealing with, right? And so as people, you hear people say, well, I got over it, but that doesn't mean that you dealt with it. Getting over it means that you just stop thinking about it. You stop, acknowledging that it happened. And so anytime that I'm walking a client through that, I always talk to them about the pain that it's going to cause you to walk through, because it's going to be painful to walk back through the pain, but it's also necessary so you can identify your feelings of what it's like to be in that painful experience from a mental perspective, right? Because it's happened, but now you're reliving it. Now you're having to play back those mental tapes. And I think what's critical is that to take. I encourage clients that this is a journey. So we're not. This is not a sprint. We're going to walk you through this process, and walking them through this process is step by step, right? You don't come in on the first session and you don't divulge everything. You slowly build the confidence within yourself. You build the courage, because if you're working with somebody who's dealt with physical and sexual abuse, that's something that's probably going to take anywhere from a 4 to 10 sessions of just really, and I'm talking about building a level of comfort, a level of comfortability with the clinician and the client to be comfortable enough to, and so many times it's really helping the client to understand that we're going to go step by step. We're not going to rush into this, because if you're working with someone who is 35 and they're dealing with something that happened at 13, you got to think about all the years that they've lived to suppress this memory.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the therapy I'm getting now. I mean, this is so good. I've tuned into some of your IG lives, and you're always advocating and just speaking truth to power, which I think is what a lot of your followers really appreciate. And not only that, but you talk about mental health from a Black man's perspective. That's sort of the lane that you carved out for yourself. And I read that you have a new project coming out, Why Black Men Don't Cry, with executive producer Tina Lawson, which we know is the mother of Beyonce and Solange. And you're doing what I read, Defying Black.
Mhm.
It's going to air on OWN and the Disney Channel. So tell us about this new project.
So this is a project that I'm excited to be a part of. It's a project that I mean, I'm humbled to be a part of it, to share my story and to share some of the things that I feel that is going to be life changing for not only myself but just also for other Black men. And one of the things that I think that is so critical is that we have to constantly have the representation and to have the faces of it. I think one of the things that, when we see Black men from a sports perspective, we only see one part of them, right? We don't see the human side, the humanity. We only see the athlete. We only see the warrior. We only see the dunks, the touchdowns, the home runs. And so we're looking at Black men from all of these different facets, but we're not able to see them from the humanity side of it. And a lot of times this is controlled and this is determined by media. So I think it's important for us to really look within ourselves and say, how can we make this normal? Because I'm speaking all over the country, and I'm thinking that I'm making some type of, I'm covering some ground, but the more ground that I cover, the more I learn that there's a lot of Black males, Black boys and men that still feel unheard, who still feel that they don't have safe spaces, who still feel that if they are open and sharing their things and that they're struggling with in their vulnerabilities, they feel that they're going to be questioned within their masculinity. They're going to be questioned with how they are viewed and how they are perceived. So I think this is really awesome that we're getting ready to work on something and really do something great and showing the world that Black men are more than just what the eye see.
Is it a documentary or a docu-series? What type of content is it?
So I think it's going to be a documentary. So yeah, the documentary series. So yeah.
That's amazing. And in addition to that, you have another project, the King Venture, kindling innovation necessary for growth. Can you talk about what your mission behind that project is?
Yeah, so my mission behind that project is really working with incoming freshmen, Black males that are entering to college. We started in the Houston, Texas area at TSU, which is a HBCU, and we started working with incoming freshmen, especially young men or young Black males that were first generational college students. And so many times these kids are coming in under the pretense that I'm trying to change the narrative of my family. I'm trying to break this generation curse. I'm trying to set a new standard. But then they don't have the tools on how to do that. And one of the things is that the King program does it provides the tools. It's helped them to understand that do not enter college without an objective, right? So do not enter college without having an understanding of that you will need community. And one of the things is that I think that is important. Also, helping them to understand social equity, right? And meaning like the relationships you build in college really determine a lot of how you are able to move forward beyond college, right? What type of equity are you building when you are having conversations with your peers, individuals that don't look like you, individuals that don't have the same, studies or the same major as you. And so I think this is such a great because I've been blessed to be in so many different rooms that allows me to hear the perspectives from people from all walks of life. Like, and I knew I was in the right space when I had a kid, Mr. J. Well, how do I talk to white people? And so they said, Mr. J, you work with a lot of white people. And I said, yeah. And so, it was a great, and a lot of the kids looked at him as, well, man, why would you ask such a stupid question? And I
Mm.
said, the only question that is stupid is the question that's not asked. So for me, I said, man, that's a great question because I lived with adopted family when I left my house when I was being physically abused by my stepdad. So I had this experience that not all white people was racist. I grew up in Mississippi, and that gave me one dynamic of whites. But then when I was best friends with a white kid who we were on the same football team, that was my brother, and I was at his house all the time. I had an experience that they were people just like us. So what that did was it taught me how to connect with people. Because see,
Mm.
if you're working to connect with a certain race, a certain ethnicity, you're going to limit your growth. You're going to limit your development process. And one of the things that I want black males to feel is feel confident no matter where you are. Feel confident no matter what room you're in, no matter who's in front of you. I don't care if he's white. I don't care if he's black, pink, yellow, green. You can feel confident in who you are. And that's what the King program does.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And what age are the students
These
that
are
you're speaking
incoming
to?
freshmen. Yeah, these are incoming freshmen.
Amazing, amazing. On top of that, and you've been a youth advocate and mentor for so long. You've authored a number of books. I believe your newest book is Identity Crisis, a discussion around social media impact on personal identity. And I wanted to talk to you about that because you are someone who's been on social media, as I mentioned. I've watched your lives, and I'm sure you have observations with how students, especially your mentees and the youth that you work with, are being impacted by social media. So, what observations have you made?
Well, some of the observations that I made, through the years of working with so many teams, is really that social media has a great influence on the young people's identity. Right, this is not the world I grew up in. Right, and I talk a lot about this in my close circle. We grew up in the '80s, and you grew up. I was just talking to a buddy of mine today, and I was just like, man, bro, you remember when we used to, send girls notes, right? And I mean, you used to pass notes in class, while you was, going to the next class, and you would tell a friend like, yo, tell Keisha, write my note. And we had a lot of interaction with each other that I believe shaped how we interact socially. The
Mhm.
challenge that I see with a lot of this generation, Gen Zs and on, is the inability to be socially aware, socially confident, and socially competent. So aware, confident, and competent. And so those three dynamics are so important because if I'm not socially aware, I'll say anything. If I'm not socially confident, I don't know how to say what I need to say. And then if I'm not socially competent, then I don't really have the intellect on how to engage properly in a space that can be beneficial to me. And so what is happening is you have a culture of people who feel that, man, I can say whatever I want behind these keys and there's no repercussions, especially when I'm working with kids who are athletes who are posting things and I'm like, bro, you can't post that if you got a scholarship on the line. You know what I mean? Freedom ain't free, right? There's a freedom of speech, but then also there's a responsibility that comes with the freedom of speech. So it's seeing those things and that their mental health has been impacted in a great way. Suicide is up, anxiety is up, depression is up. It's so many different things from the psychological realm that has increased because of social media, because there's this misconception or this notion that I have to be everything today. There's no consideration that there's a process, right? It's like, no, I want it today. And if I don't have it today, I'm a failure. If I don't have it
Mm.
today, then I'm not, appreciated or accepted. And so,
Mhm.
identity crisis is something that I'm looking forward to when it drops later in this fall. But I'm so excited about the newest book that drops this coming weekend. It's Just Heal, Bro, for a men's journal. So, and both of these projects have I've gained so much because when I'm on social media, I really and I don't want to say this is therapist in me, but I look to see what people are not saying.
Mm.
And because that's a lot of what therapy is too. What are people
Mhm.
not saying? Because what people are not saying is often hidden by the words that they choose when they speak. So, and that's how I create a lot of my
Well,
content.
what do you mean by that?
Well, how I choose my word is always a representation of where my thoughts are. So when you look at somebody who's very, very um, passionate in one area and they're not able to clearly articulate, it's usually that this is something that is very dearing to me, to them from a personal experience. And so I look at word choice, I look at word phrases, and people like may say, "Well, that's a little too deep," but this is how I really gain an understanding of what people are not saying. Because sometimes it's easier to have a voice for others and not have a voice for yourself. Because, see, to have a voice for yourself, challenge again the memories that you
Mm.
have to recall to speak for yourself, but you will jump up and hold up a sign for everyone else. And so I'm always interested in, well, tell me about you.
Mhm.
Like, why are you connected to this? What is about this initiative that draws you? And I think we don't take the time to really connect. Like we have so here's what we do. We have a lot of engagement, but no connection.
You know what? Those are great points. I also wanted to get your thoughts on just how you think the pandemic has really affected mental health and wellness. A lot of us have been very distressed, especially in our community. Have you made any observations about that?
Yeah, the pandemic, what the pandemic does was brought everybody back to reality. We were all using something to distract us, right? Whether it was work, whether it was your job, gym, happy hour, or whatever it is. Pandemic basically put us in a seat and says, no, whatever you've been running from, you're going to deal with it now.
Hmm.
We saw divorces increase. We saw domestic violence increase. We saw suicide increase. We saw an increase in just about every phase of life that many of us don't deal with because we can substitute, right? Or should I say, we can supplement in other areas. Okay, I don't have a good relationship with my wife, but I can go through the motion because I'm gonna just pay the bills and I'm gonna go home. And by the time I get home, it's 5:30, 6 o'clock, eat with the kids, and I don't have to engage with her. But when you got to sit with these people all day long,
Hmm.
you don't have a great relationship with your kids, and now you got to help them with their schoolwork because they're virtual learning. When you have been forced to deal with your weight issues or your health issues, your mental health, you now have to sit with it. And the pandemic challenged each of us to sit with something that we have been avoiding. Because the one thing that about us as American and as a people, black, white, I don't care what color you are, we have very obsessive behavior. We obsess about success. We obsess
Mm.
about money. We obsess about the bad. And I'm a firm believer when you're very obsessive about something, you're actually avoiding something in other areas of your life.
That is really, really deep. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Another area that I want to touch on before we have to wrap is, you're a former Green Bay Packer, and we see so many athletes speaking out about mental health. It seems like for the first time ever, at least in my lifetime, from Naomi Osaka to Simone Biles. What is your reaction to it, and why do you think it's important for Black athletes in particular to put their mental health first?
Well, it's very important, and also just correction.
Yes.
Green Bay didn't sign me, so they
Oh, I'm
brought me in.
sorry.
So they didn't sign me. So, but I think it's important. One of the things is that as I've worked with so many NFL guys, and even partnered with the NFL PA and Players Association Foundation, is one of the things is the world now has to see us as people. See, when you've had this perception that athletes have it together, see, a lot of people look at athletes as being privileged because they're only looking at it from the spectrum of money.
Mm,
This is why I don't look at what people do because I was once there. I was a person who had the athletic abilities, who had the opportunities, but then again, I had daddy issues.
mm,
And football just hit it, right? And so football didn't make dad validate me. Football doesn't make the abuse go away. Football doesn't make the abandonment go away. There's so many athletes that wake up every day that are struggling with so much. And one of the things is that we have to get to a place where we begin to see people as humans and we begin to see them not for what they're doing, but who they are. And that's why it's so important. But I think the pushback is because the world is not ready to see athletes as humans. They want to keep the persona, this is my hero, right? You know what I'm saying? This is the person that I've grown to idolize. This is the person that I've looked up to and the person that I've grown to say, hey, I want my kids to be like Naomi. I want my son to be like Tom Brady. But these are people. Especially, it's so important for black athletes because there's not many black clinicians in the NFL. There's not many black therapists, or social workers that are in the space of professional sports. I was the only black man that graduated in my master's program when I was in grad school. So there's not many. And then two, there's not enough research on what works for blacks.
mm.
So every time that we come out and share a part of our story, our journey, it's educating them all at the same time. Because when you go through the DSM-5, it's on the, volume number 5, the researchers and psychiatrists have very little input from blacks. Out of 41,000 psychiatrists across the country, less than 2% of African Americans.
Mm.
So what context do you have? So you only have the context that blacks are powerful, they're strong, they're big boned.
Mhm.
So I don't think to really break down their mental. That I'm gonna give him this ball, I'm gonna give him his $20 million check. Whatever issues he got going on or go away because he just signed that big bonus. It doesn't. If anything, it magnifies it because now I got trauma and I got money.
Mm.
So the
Yeah.
more that
Hmm.
we talk about mental health as athletes and as me being a former athlete and working in the space, we have to continue to see it, especially for black men. Because what hurts me is I just lost an athlete 2 weeks ago, a former NFL player, young kid that committed suicide.
Mm.
And I just spoke to him probably a month before this. You're not going to hear these stories. And again, I'm not putting this on the league or anybody. This is why I chose to go back to school, educate myself, and take what I learned through my process and say, how can I not? I don't want to be an advocate. That's great. I want to know how can I help these guys because I've been there. I know what it was like to stand in the Green Bay office and talk to the GM and to hear this story like, hey, we're going to sign. I know what it's like to be brought in and out of tryouts. I know what it's like to hop from team to team. So I know what that was like. And I know that he didn't understand that as I was hopping from team to team, I was trying to find my identity. And that thing goes into how we fit into life. Because what do you tell an athlete when he's put his whole life into sports and all of a sudden he can't do it anymore? And you're
Hmm.
saying, hey, go be a great person. Hey, go be a great husband. How? Go be a great father. Go be a great citizen. How? You gave him tools on how to be a physical specimen, but you didn't give him the tools on how to mentally cope. And this is why self-harm is the first thing that an athlete does. And I'm
You
done.
know, yeah, no, you dropped the mic, Jay. I do wish we had more time because the issues
Yes,
that you bring up are so pivotal about how we invest so much, especially in athletes, our idols, but we're not investing in their personal and mental development, and they're carrying around so much baggage. I mean, and that goes across the spectrum with any
right.
person, professional, wherever they may find success, or maybe they're still striving for that. But Jay, I do want to just let folks know how they can reach you, how they can support you. And again, if you could tell us about the project you have in the pipeline.
Yeah, so Just Heal, bro. Go get that book. It's out this Saturday. It's a men's journal for all men from all walks of life. You can reach me on Instagram, Twitter, King J Barnett, all one word. And KJB Coaching is my virtual counseling and coaching practice. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to the projects that we have coming up and looking forward to everything that we're doing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jay. You know, you're a friend of Black Enterprise. You're
Yes,
always
thank you.
welcome, and we always appreciate you.
All right, thank you.